Marcus Chen had exactly 47 hours of oxygen left when he realized the transport ship wasn't coming back. He sat in the control room of Facility 7, staring at the message that had come through 3 days ago. Evacuation complete. All personnel accounted for. The words glowed on the screen, final and absolute. They had counted everyone except him. Of course they had. Nobody counts the prisoners. The facility was dying around him. Red warning lights pulsed in every corridor. The alien technology that powered this place, this massive structure floating in the void between star systems, was shutting down section by section. Without the Archeon engineers to maintain it, the prison would become a tomb within a week. Marcus's tomb. He looked down at the gray jumpsuit he wore, at the identification number stenciled across his chest. 7-3847. Not a name, just a number. That's all he had been for 6 years. Marcus Chen, former systems analyst for the Lunar Mining Corporation, convicted of corporate espionage and sentenced to 15 years in an off-world facility. They had shipped him here, to this joint human-Archeon prison at the edge of claimed space, because Earth's prisons were full, and the Archeons had offered to take humanity's worst criminals in exchange for technological data. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. He had been convicted of stealing corporate secrets. Now he was trapped in a facility full of actual alien secrets, and none of it mattered because he was going to die here. The emergency had started 2 weeks ago. Something had gone wrong with the facility's power core, deep in the restricted sections where even the guards never went. The Archeons, those tall crystalline beings who ran the prison with cold efficiency, had tried everything to fix it. But the damage kept spreading, like a cancer eating through the station's systems. Then came the evacuation order. The Archeon Correctional Authority had decided the facility was beyond saving. They loaded up their personnel, took the high-value prisoners from the upper tiers, the ones whose governments might actually pay ransom, and left. The message had been clear. Low-priority inmates would be processed for transfer on secondary vessels. Marcus had waited in his cell with 50 other forgotten prisoners. They had waited for 2 days before the lights went out in their section. When Marcus finally broke through the emergency lock, he found the corridors empty. No guards. No other prisoners. Just silence and the sound of systems failing. He had searched for survivors for 18 hours before accepting the truth. He was alone. Everyone else in his tier had either been moved in a transfer he'd missed, or they had died when life support failed to their sections. The bodies he found told him which option was more likely. Now Marcus sat in the control room, the only place with stable power, watching his oxygen timer count down. He had managed to seal off this section and reroute emergency power, but it was temporary. Everything here was temporary. Marcus stood up and walked to the large window that overlooked the prison's central void. Facility 7 was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, but the Archeons had done something to it, transformed it with their technology. The interior was vast, with multiple levels spiraling down into darkness. Crystalline structures grew from the walls like frozen trees, pulsing with faint blue light. This was Archeon biotech, something between living and machine that humanity still didn't fully understand. In the center of it all, suspended in the void, was the deep section. Marcus could see it now through the observation window, a massive spherical structure covered in what looked like ice or crystal. It was the prison's maximum security area, where they kept the truly dangerous inmates. He had heard stories about what was down there. Beings so violent or unstable that they needed to be kept in suspended animation. Criminals from species that humans had never even met. The Archeons had always been secretive about the deep section. It was automated, sealed, maintained by systems that operated independently from the rest of the facility. During his 6 years here, Marcus had never seen anyone go in or come out. But now, looking at it through the window, Marcus noticed something wrong. The crystalline surface that covered the deep section was cracked. Dark lines spiderwebbed across its surface, and through those cracks, He could see a faint red glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. Marcus pulled up the facility schematics on his tablet, using the security access he had hacked days ago. The guards had been sloppy about locking down systems when they evacuated. He found the deep section files, and his blood ran cold. Power failure in deep section, containment protocols failing, stasis fields at 23% and dropping. Whatever was down there was waking up. Marcus spent the next hour trying to convince himself it wasn't his problem. He was going to die here anyway. Why should he care if something escaped from the deep section? Let it wake up and find an empty prison. Maybe it would die too when the oxygen ran out. But he couldn't stop thinking about it. His mind, trained by years of analyzing systems and finding patterns, kept circling back to the same questions. What kind of prisoner needed that level of containment? What had the Archaeans been so afraid of that they built an entire separate facility within the facility? More importantly, why was the deep section on independent power? According to the schematics, it had its own reactor, its own life support, its own everything. It was designed to operate even if the rest of the facility went dead. Marcus pulled up more files, diving deeper into the restricted archives. The Archaeans' language was difficult, but the translation software did its best. He found technical specifications, power consumption data, and finally, a manifest. Deep section containment roster. One entity. One. There was only one prisoner down there. Everything else, all that security and power and automated systems, was for a single being. Marcus found a partial file with a designation: Remnant Class Threat, Quantum Consciousness, Extreme Containment Protocol Sigma. The rest of the file was corrupted or encrypted beyond his ability to access. But those few words told him enough. Quantum consciousness meant something that existed partially outside normal space and time. Remnant class meant it was one of the last of its kind. And Extreme Containment Protocol Sigma was the highest classification the Archaeans had. They had been keeping something ancient and powerful in the deep section. And now it was waking up. Marcus made a decision that he knew was probably stupid. He had 45 hours of oxygen left. He could spend it sitting in the control room waiting to suffocate, or he could spend it trying to understand what was happening. At least investigating the deep section would give him something to do besides count down his own death. He gathered supplies, a tablet with the facility schematics, a portable oxygen pack that might give him an extra few hours, and an emergency beacon that probably wouldn't reach anyone, but made him feel slightly better anyway. Then he suited up in a maintenance EVA suit and headed for the deep section access tunnel. The prison was a maze of corridors that spiraled down through the hollowed asteroid. Marcus had only ever seen his own tier and the common areas where prisoners were allowed for work assignments. Now, with full access to the maps, he realized how vast Facility 7 really was. There were entire sections he had never known existed. The access tunnel to the deep section was marked with Archaean warning symbols that his translator rendered as Authorized Personnel Only, Lethal Force Automated. That was comforting. Marcus checked the power grid and confirmed what he suspected. The automated defenses were offline. Everything was offline except for the deep section itself. The tunnel sloped downward at a steep angle, taking him deeper into the asteroid's heart. The walls here were different from the rest of the prison. Instead of the usual gray metal and crystal, these walls were smooth and black, almost organic looking. They absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Marcus's footsteps echoed in the empty tunnel. His breath sounded loud inside the EVA helmet. The oxygen pack on his back felt heavy, a constant reminder that he was on borrowed time. After 20 minutes of walking, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. Marcus stopped at the threshold and stared. The deep section was even more massive than it had looked from the observation window. The spherical structure hung suspended in the center of the chamber, held in place by dozens of crystalline cables that crackled with energy. The surface was definitely cracked now, large pieces of the icy shell breaking away and falling slowly in the low gravity. Through the gaps in the shell, Marcus could see the interior. It wasn't a prison cell. It was more like a cocoon, filled with thick fluid that glowed with that pulsing red light. And in the center of it all, suspended in the fluid, was something that Marcus's brain struggled to process. It looked like a person, but wrong. The proportions were too long, the limbs too many. Its skin, if you could call it that, seemed to shift between solid and transparent, as if Marcus was seeing it in multiple states of existence at once. Crystal growths covered parts of its body, or grew from it, Marcus couldn't tell which. But worst of all were its eyes. They were open, and they were looking directly at him. Marcus took an involuntary step backward. His rational mind told him that was impossible. The thing was contained behind layers of alien technology, suspended in fluid, supposedly still in stasis. It couldn't see him, but it was definitely looking at him. And then, impossibly, it smiled. Marcus turned and ran. He made it 3 steps before his tablet chimed with an incoming message. He skidded to a stop, fumbling with the device. Messages weren't possible. The communication array was down. Nothing could send messages. He looked at the screen. The text was in English, perfect English, not translated from Archeon. Just 3 words. "Hello, Marcus Chen." His hands shook as he typed a response. "How do you know my name?" The reply came instantly. "I know everything in the facility's database. I have been conscious and connected to these systems for 3,847 of your days. Did you think I was truly sleeping?" Marcus looked back at the cocoon. The thing inside was still watching him with those horrible eyes that existed in too many dimensions at once. "What are you?" Marcus typed. "A prisoner, like you. The Archeons called me Void Weaver. My real name is not pronounceable in your language or perceivable by your linear consciousness. I am the last of the architects, beings who existed before your universe settled into its current state. We shaped reality itself until the younger species decided we were too dangerous and locked us away." Marcus wanted to run, but something kept him frozen in place. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that he was dead anyway. So what did it matter? "Why are you telling me this?" he typed. "Because you are the only one here. Because the Archeons made a mistake when they evacuated. They thought the deep section could maintain containment indefinitely, but they didn't account for cascade failures affecting the quantum locks. I will be free within 12 hours. And when I am free, I will need something from you." "I'm not helping you escape," Marcus typed quickly. "I don't need your help to escape. I need your help to survive after I do." That caught Marcus off guard. "What do you mean? My containment has been active for 4,000 of your years. My physical form has atrophied. The stasis fluid has been keeping me alive, but when containment fails, I will have only hours before this body dies completely. However, this facility has medical bays with regeneration tanks. If you help me reach one, I can stabilize. In exchange, I will give you something you desperately need." "What could you possibly give me?" Marcus typed. "Oxygen, life, freedom. I can reactivate this facility's systems. I can restore life support, power, communications. I can call for rescue. But I cannot do any of that from inside a containment sphere while dying. I need a partner, Marcus Chen. And you need a reason to keep living for the next 12 hours." Marcus stood in the dark chamber, staring at his tablet screen, his mind racing. This was insane. The thing in the deep section was clearly dangerous, clearly something that entire civilizations had worked together to imprison. Helping it escape would be, without exaggeration, one of the worst decisions anyone could possibly make. On the other hand, he was going to die in 44 hours if nothing changed. "How do I know you won't kill me?" Marcus typed. "You don't. But consider this. I have been alone for 4,000 years. The Archeons put me here and forgot about me. If I wanted simply to rage and destroy, I could do that without your help. But I am tired of being alone. I am tired of imprisonment. I want to live, truly live, in this strange new universe that has grown up while I slept. To do that, I need allies. You could be the first. Marcus read the message 3 times. There was something in it that resonated with him. He thought about his own imprisonment, his 6 years in Facility 7, forgotten by Earth, abandoned by the very system that had condemned him. He understood being alone. He also understood that he was probably being manipulated by something far more intelligent than himself. But what choice did he really have? "What do you need me to do?" Marcus typed. The instructions came through quickly, detailed and precise. The Void Weaver, or whatever it really was, had been planning this for a long time. It needed Marcus to access the medical bay and prepare one of the regeneration tanks. It needed him to override certain safety protocols that would normally prevent such a being from using human medical equipment. And it needed him to manually release the containment sphere's final locks when the power failed completely. "The automated systems will fight the failure," the Void Weaver explained via text. "They will try to maintain containment even as everything else collapses. But if someone manually overrides them at the right moment, the cascade will be instant and complete. I will be free." "And if I don't do this?" Marcus asked. "Then we both die. You in 44 hours when your oxygen runs out. Me in approximately 18 hours when containment finally fails on its own, and I am too weak to reach the medical bay. At least if we work together, one of us might survive." Marcus made his decision. He was going to hell for this, probably literally, but he was going anyway. Might as well go out doing something interesting. He spent the next 6 hours preparing. The medical bay was in a different section of the facility, one that still had emergency power. The regeneration tanks were Archeon technology designed to work with any biological form, using quantum field manipulation to repair damage at the cellular level. They were sophisticated enough that they could theoretically handle even a being as strange as the Void Weaver. Marcus overrode the safety protocols, a process that required him to hack through 3 layers of Archeon security systems. His skills as a systems analyst finally proved useful for something other than getting him thrown in prison. He configured the tank to accept an unknown biological signature and programmed it to begin regeneration immediately upon detecting a new patient. While he worked, the Void Weaver sent him more information. It explained that it wasn't truly evil, despite what the Archeons believed. The architects had been reality shapers, yes, beings of immense power who could manipulate the fundamental forces of existence. But they had been scholars and artists, not conquerors. "We made one mistake," the Void Weaver explained. "We forgot that younger species would be afraid of what they didn't understand. When humans, Archeons, and others began to spread across the stars, they found evidence of our work, realities we had shaped, dimensions we had folded. They declared us a threat and hunted us down. I am the last because I was the first they captured." Marcus didn't know if he believed this version of events, but it didn't really matter. He was committed now. The containment failure began exactly when the Void Weaver predicted. Marcus was back in the deep section chamber, watching the monitors. The crystalline shell was breaking apart faster now, large chunks falling away. The red glow from inside had become almost blinding. "Now," appeared on his tablet. "Override the quantum locks. Sequence Alpha 7 Sigma." Marcus accessed the control panel that the Void Weaver had directed him to. His hands moved across the holographic interface, inputting commands in Archeon script that he barely understood. Each command felt like sealing his own fate. The final lock disengaged with a sound like reality tearing. The containment sphere split open, and the fluid inside rushed out in a wave that defied gravity, flowing upward as much as down. The Void Weaver emerged from its prison, and Marcus finally saw it fully. It was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Its form constantly shifted, solid one moment and translucent the next. It had too many limbs, or perhaps the same limbs existing in multiple places simultaneously. Crystal growths covered its body, but they seemed to be both part of it and growing through it, as if it existed in multiple states at once. The Void Weaver collapsed immediately. Its body, if it could be called a body, barely held together. It pulled itself forward with limbs that flickered in and out of existence, leaving trails of light in the air. Marcus realized with horror that it was heading toward him. He wanted to run but forced himself to stay still. This was the deal. This was what he had agreed to. The Void Weaver reached him and looked up with those impossible eyes. When it spoke, the words came not from any mouth but from all around him, vibrating through the air itself. "Help me." Marcus had prepared a medical transport sled, one of the hovering platforms used to move injured inmates. He helped the Void Weaver onto it, trying not to think about the fact that he was touching something that shouldn't exist. Its skin felt like ice and fire and electricity all at once, and looking at it directly made his eyes hurt. The journey to the medical bay took 30 minutes that felt like hours. The Void Weaver was fading, its form becoming less stable with each passing minute. By the time they reached the regeneration tank, it was barely maintaining coherence. Marcus activated the tank and helped the Void Weaver into the fluid. The moment it was submerged, the tank's systems came alive, sensors detecting the alien biology and adapting in real time. The fluid changed color, cycling through spectrum of light that hurt to look at. The Void Weaver's form began to stabilize, the flickering stopped, and its body became solid, more defined. The crystal growths started to recede or integrate. Marcus couldn't tell which. After several minutes, it looked almost like it could be a very strange humanoid, albeit one with too many joints and skin that shimmered with colors that didn't quite exist. Marcus collapsed into a chair, exhausted. He had done it. He had freed something that civilizations had worked together to imprison. He was either the stupidest person alive, or would be if anyone else was actually alive to compare himself to. His tablet chimed. A message from the Void Weaver. "Thank you. The regeneration will take 6 hours. Rest. I will fulfill my promise when I wake." Marcus wanted to stay awake, to keep watch, but exhaustion pulled him under. He hadn't slept properly in days, running on adrenaline and fear. Now, with nothing left to do, his body shut down. He dreamed of stars and geometric patterns that folded into themselves. He dreamed of realities that weren't quite like his own, where the laws of physics bent in different directions. He dreamed of being alone in the dark for thousands of years. When Marcus woke, the medical bay was lit with normal lighting, not emergency lights. Regular, steady illumination that came from functioning power systems. He sat up quickly, his heart pounding. The regeneration tank was open. The Void Weaver stood next to it, examining its own hands. It looked more solid now, more real. It had settled into a form that was almost humanoid, though still distinctly other. 7 feet tall, with elongated limbs and fingers that had one too many joints. Its skin had stabilized into something that looked like pale blue crystal threaded with veins of light. Its eyes were still wrong, still existing in more dimensions than Marcus could fully perceive, but they were less unsettling now. "You're awake," the Void Weaver said. And this time Marcus could tell the voice was coming from the being itself, not from everywhere at once. "Good. I have been working." Marcus stood up slowly. "Working on what?" "Fulfilling my promise." The Void Weaver gestured toward a control panel. "The facility is coming back online. I interfaced with the central systems while regenerating. Your species' computer technology is primitive but functional. The power core that was failing has been stabilized. Life support is operating at 87% capacity and rising. You are no longer in danger of suffocating." Marcus rushed to the control panel and checked the readouts. It was true. Systems throughout the facility showed green status indicators. The power grid was stable. Oxygen levels were rising. The temperature was normalizing. "How did you do this?" Marcus asked. "I am an architect," the Void Weaver said simply. "We shaped reality. Fixing a primitive power core is trivial by comparison. The damage was actually quite simple. A cascade failure in the quantum resonance chamber. Your Archeon engineers were trying to repair it from the outside, treating symptoms rather than causes. I simply went into the system at the quantum level and restructured the failing components. Marcus sat down again, his mind struggling to process this. So the facility is safe now? Fully operational? Mostly. Some sections are too damaged to repair with the available resources. But the core systems will function indefinitely now. You could live here for years if necessary. The Void Weaver tilted its head in a gesture that was probably meant to be reassuring, but looked distinctly alien. However, I have also repaired the long-range communication array and sent distress signals to both human and Archeon vessels. Rescue should arrive within 3 weeks. 3 weeks? Marcus stood up again. That's fast. We're way out on the edge of explored space. I may have included information in the distress signal suggesting that something interesting was happening at Facility 7. Multiple governments will rush to investigate. The Void Weaver made a sound that might have been laughter. I also restored the facility's defensive systems. We will be safe until they arrive. Marcus walked to the window and looked out at the prison. Lights were coming on throughout the structure, section by section. The crystalline growths on the walls were pulsing with renewed energy. Facility 7 was coming back to life. Now what? Marcus asked. When rescue arrives, they're going to find you, an escaped prisoner from the deep section. They'll try to put you back. Yes, the Void Weaver agreed. That is likely, unless we give them a reason not to. What do you mean? The Void Weaver walked over to stand beside Marcus at the window. I have been thinking during my regeneration. I have been imprisoned for 4,000 years for crimes I did not commit, for being feared rather than understood. You have been imprisoned for 6 years for crimes you did commit, but which pale in comparison to the corruption of those who condemned you. Marcus blinked. How did you know? I read your file while accessing the system. You stole corporate secrets, yes, but only to expose illegal mining operations that were killing workers. You were a whistleblower who was prosecuted instead of protected. The Archeons accepted you as a prisoner because your government wanted you silenced. Marcus felt a cold anger rise in his chest. He had known this, of course, but hearing it stated so plainly made it real again. Doesn't matter now. It does matter, because neither of us deserves to be imprisoned, and I propose that we prove it. The Void Weaver turned to face him fully. This facility is operational again. The defensive systems are active. When rescue ships arrive, we are in a position to negotiate rather than surrender. Negotiate what? Your freedom. My freedom. We saved this facility. We can offer them something valuable in exchange for our liberty. Marcus thought about it. It was insane. It was also the only chance he had. What could we possibly offer that they'd want more than keeping us locked up? The Void Weaver smiled, and it was still disturbing, but Marcus was getting used to it. Knowledge. Technology. I am the last architect. I know things that no one else in this universe remembers. I can teach them how to work with reality at the quantum level, how to build technologies that your species and the Archeons cannot even imagine. And you, Marcus Chen, are the only human who knows how to communicate with me, who understands my perspective. I barely understand you at all, Marcus protested. You understand me better than anyone has in 4,000 years. You saw me as a being to be negotiated with, not a thing to be controlled. That makes you valuable. Together we can offer something that will change the balance of power in this region of space. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus and the Void Weaver worked together to prepare. The Void Weaver taught Marcus about architect technology, explaining concepts that hurt his brain, but that he slowly began to grasp. Marcus taught the Void Weaver about human and Archeon politics, helping it understand the complexities of the civilization that had grown up while it slept. They created demonstrations, proof of what the Void Weaver could do. They repaired sections of the facility that should have been beyond salvage. They improved the power systems to efficiency levels that the Archeons had never achieved. They even began designing new technologies, hybrid systems that combined architect knowledge with human and Archeon engineering. Marcus also learned about the Void Weaver's past. Its real name was something like a mathematical equation expressed in folded space, but it told Marcus to call it Weaver for simplicity. It had been an artist among its people, someone who shaped small realities as a form of expression. It had never wanted to conquer or destroy. It had simply wanted to create. "We scared them," Weaver explained one day as they worked in the engineering bay. "The younger species looked at what we could do and saw only threat. They never asked what we wanted to do. They saw power and assumed malice." "To be fair," Marcus said, "you can literally restructure reality. That's terrifying. Is it more terrifying than your species' nuclear weapons? Or the Archeon's planet-killing mass drivers? Every species develops power that could destroy others. The question is intent, and no one ever asked us about ours." Marcus thought about his own experience. He had exposed corporate crimes and been labeled a criminal for it. Intent had mattered less than inconvenience to powerful people. Maybe Weaver was right. Maybe fear made people punish first and asked questions never. The rescue ships arrived exactly on schedule, 3 weeks after Weaver had sent the distress signals. There were 5 vessels in total: 2 human military ships, 2 Archeon correctional transports, and 1 ship that Marcus didn't recognize, probably belonging to one of the other species that participated in the multi-species alliance. Marcus and Weaver watched them approach from the command center. The facility's defensive systems were active, but not engaged. A clear signal that they weren't hostile but also weren't helpless. The first communication came from the human military ship. "Facility 7, this is Captain Rodriguez of the UESS Determination. We received your distress signal. Please identify yourself and state your situation." Marcus opened the channel. "Captain Rodriguez, this is Marcus Chen, formerly inmate 73847. I am the only human currently on Facility 7. The facility experienced catastrophic system failures during the evacuation. I survived and managed to restore basic operations with assistance." There was a long pause. "Marcus Chen, our records show you were categorized as a low-priority transfer. How did you survive 3 weeks alone on a failing facility?" "That's a long story, Captain. I'm ready to explain everything, but I need to speak with whoever has command authority for all 5 ships. This situation is complex." Another pause, longer this time. Then a new voice came through, speaking in the clicking language of the Archeons, translated by the system. "This is Overseer Kalth of the Archeon Correctional Authority. Marcus Chen, you are a prisoner under our jurisdiction. You will surrender immediately and prepare for retrieval. With respect, Overseer, I'm not surrendering to anyone until we talk. I have information about what happened here, information that affects all of our governments. I also have someone you're going to want to meet. Explain yourself." Marcus took a breath. "The power failure that led to the evacuation? It was caused by a cascade failure in the deep section. The containment there has been breached. The prisoner has been released. The response was immediate and panicked." Multiple voices shouted over each other in different languages. Marcus heard the words "Remnant Class Threat" and "Containment Protocol Sigma" several times. When the chaos died down, Overseer Kalth spoke again, its voice tight with what Marcus had learned to recognize as Archeon fear. "If the deep section prisoner has been released, you are in immediate danger. Evacuate to the nearest docking port. We will send armed teams." "I'm not in danger, Overseer. The deep section prisoner is standing right next to me in the command center. We've been working together for 3 weeks. And before you do something aggressive, I should mention that it has full control of this facility's defensive systems, which are now operating at 400% above original specifications." The communication channel exploded again. Marcus muted it temporarily and looked at Weaver, who was watching the ships with those unsettling multi-dimensional eyes. "Are you ready for this?" Marcus asked. "I have been ready for 4,000 years, Weaver replied. It took 2 hours of argument, but eventually, Marcus and Weaver convinced them to send a small delegation to the facility for face-to-face negotiations. The delegation included Captain Rodriguez, Overseer Kelth, and representatives from 3 other species, all of them heavily armed and accompanied by combat drones. They met in the facility's main conference room, which Weaver had restored to perfect working order. The Archeon delegates went rigid with fear when they saw Weaver, their crystalline bodies dimming with stress. The human military personnel aimed weapons without even trying to hide it. "Everyone calm down," Marcus said firmly. "If Weaver wanted to hurt anyone, you'd already be hurt. We asked you here to negotiate, not to fight." "There is nothing to negotiate," Overseer Kelth said. "That entity is classified as a remnant-class threat. It must be returned to containment immediately." "Why?" Weaver asked, speaking for the first time. Its voice was calm, almost gentle. "What have I done to earn this classification? What crime did I commit that justified 4,000 years of imprisonment?" "Your species attempted to subjugate—" "My species did nothing of the sort. We existed. We created. We shaped small realities as art. Your species and others found our works, did not understand them, and chose fear over understanding. You hunted us down and imprisoned the few you could catch. You never declared war. You never negotiated. You simply decided we were too dangerous to exist freely." The conference room was silent. Finally, one of the other species representatives, a being that looked like a floating cluster of tentacles, spoke in a melodic language that the translators rendered as, "Even if what you say is true, your capabilities remain dangerous. You can manipulate quantum reality. No government can allow such power to exist without control." "Then let me propose an alternative," Weaver said. "I will work with your governments. I will teach you what I know. I will help you develop technologies that will benefit all your species. In exchange, I ask for freedom of movement and the same rights that any citizen of your alliance enjoys. And I ask that Marcus Chen be pardoned for his crimes and released to work with me as a liaison." "That's impossible," Captain Rodriguez said. "You're talking about rewriting decades of legal frameworks, not to mention the security implications." "Let me show you what I'm offering," Weaver interrupted. It gestured towards the window. "Look at this facility. It was dying 3 weeks ago. Now it operates more efficiently than it ever has. I did that in days. Imagine what I could do with proper resources and time. Imagine power systems that never fail. Imagine medical technology that can cure diseases you haven't even discovered yet. Imagine ships that can travel between stars in hours instead of weeks." The delegates looked at each other. Marcus could see the calculation happening in their eyes. Fear versus opportunity. Control versus advancement. "You're asking us to trust you," Overseer Kelth said slowly. "I'm asking you to make the same choice Marcus Chen made. He was a prisoner, condemned and forgotten. He could have left me in containment. Instead, he chose to see me as a person rather than a threat. That choice saved both our lives. Now I'm asking you to make a similar choice on a larger scale." The negotiations took 3 days. Representatives flew back and forth between the facility and their respective ships, consulting with governments and legal experts. Marcus and Weaver were confined to the command center during this time, though the confinement was comfortable, and they had access to all the facility's systems. "Do you think they'll agree?" Marcus asked on the second night. "They will," Weaver said with confidence, "because the alternative is trying to recapture me by force, and they know they cannot. I have had 4,000 years to study this facility's systems. They cannot take me unless I allow it." "So we're holding them hostage?" "No. We're offering them a choice. Fear or opportunity. Control or cooperation. They're intelligent beings. They'll choose wisely." On the 3rd day, the delegates returned with a proposal. Weaver would be granted conditional freedom under the supervision of a multi-species research council. It would share its knowledge in exchange for rights and protections similar to those enjoyed by any citizen of the Alliance. There would be restrictions, monitoring, regular check-ins with authorities. Marcus would be granted a full pardon and released from custody. He would serve as Weaver's official liaison to human governments, a position that came with diplomatic status and legal immunity for his past crimes. In exchange, Both of them would help establish a new research facility, not a prison, where beings of different species could work together to advance technology and understanding. Facility 7 would become the center of this new enterprise, a symbol of cooperation over fear. "It's not perfect," Captain Rodriguez admitted. "You'll still be watched, still restricted in some ways, but it's better than imprisonment." Marcus looked at Weaver, who nodded slightly. "We accept," Marcus said. The transition took months. Facility 7 was transformed from a prison into a research station. Scientists and engineers from a dozen species came to work there, learning from Weaver and contributing their own knowledge. The gray corridors were repainted. The cells were converted into laboratories. The guard towers became observation decks for studying the stars. Marcus found himself in an unexpected role. He wasn't a prisoner anymore, but he wasn't quite free either. He was something new, a bridge between species, between ways of thinking. His job was to help others understand Weaver, and to help Weaver understand the complex politics and fears of the younger species. It wasn't easy. Many of the scientists who came to Facility 7 were terrified of Weaver at first. They had grown up on stories about the architects, tales of reality shapers who could unmake worlds with a thought. Seeing Weaver in person, watching it manipulate quantum fields like a sculptor working with clay, made those fears feel very real. But Marcus had learned something during his 3 weeks alone with Weaver. Fear came from not understanding. And understanding came from conversation, from working together, from seeing someone as a person rather than a concept. He organized small meetings where scientists could ask Weaver questions in a casual setting. He translated not just words, but intent, helping bridge the gap between Weaver's mathematical way of thinking and the more linear thought processes of humans and archaeons. He showed them that Weaver wasn't a threat to be controlled, but a resource to be valued. Slowly, attitudes began to change. The first breakthrough came when Weaver helped a human engineer solve a problem with a power coupling that had stumped her for months. Weaver simply looked at the system, understood it at the quantum level, and explained what was wrong in terms the engineer could grasp. The fix took 10 minutes. Word spread. Soon, scientists were lining up to consult with Weaver on their projects. The being that had been imprisoned for 4,000 years became the most sought-after consultant in the research station. Marcus watched this transformation with quiet satisfaction. He remembered being prisoner 73847, forgotten and abandoned. Now he was Marcus Chen again, a person with a name and a purpose. He had gone from waiting to die to helping reshape the future of multiple species. 6 months after the negotiations, Marcus stood in the new observation deck with Weaver, watching ships come and go from the station. Facility 7 had become one of the busiest research hubs in the sector. "Do you ever regret it?" Marcus asked. "Agreeing to work with them instead of just leaving?" Weaver was quiet for a moment, its form shimmering slightly as it thought. "I could have escaped. I could have taken a ship and disappeared into deep space. But then what? I would have been alone again, just in a different way. This is better. This is purpose. Even with the restrictions, the monitoring? Freedom is not the absence of all constraint," Weaver said. "It is the presence of choice. I choose to be here. I choose to share what I know. That choice makes all the difference." Marcus understood. He had been given a choice, too, back in that moment when he decided to free Weaver instead of just waiting to die. That choice had changed everything. A message came through on Marcus's tablet. It was from Captain Rodriguez, who had become a frequent visitor to the station. "Chen, we need you in Lab 7. Dr. Sharma's team has a question about the quantum resonance project, and nobody can understand what Weaver is trying to explain." Marcus smiled. "Duty calls," he said to Weaver. "Indeed. Shall we go confuse some scientists together?" As they walked through the corridors of Facility 7, Marcus noticed something that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Scientists from different species working side by side, sharing ideas, building technologies that combined their different approaches. Humans with their practical engineering, archaeons with their biotechnology, other species contributing their own unique perspectives. And at the center of it all, teaching and learning in equal measure, was the last architect. The being that everyone had feared was now helping them all reach toward a future none of them could have imagined alone. In Lab 7, Dr. Sharma and her team were gathered around a holographic display showing a complex quantum field equation. They all looked frustrated and confused. "Thank God you're here," Dr. Sharma said when she saw Marcus and Weaver. "Weaver explained this 3 times, and I still don't understand how the resonance cascade is supposed to stabilize. It looks like it should tear itself apart." Marcus looked at the display, then at Weaver. "Show me," he said. Weaver manipulated the hologram, its too many jointed fingers moving through the air in patterns that made the equations dance. As it worked, it explained in its mathematical language that Marcus had learned to partially understand. "Okay," Marcus said, turning to the human scientists. "Weaver is saying that you're thinking about it wrong. You're treating the quantum field as static, but it's actually fluid. It doesn't stabilize by being rigid. It stabilizes by being flexible, by flowing around disruptions instead of resisting them." "Like water?" Dr. Sharma asked. "More like a tree in wind," Marcus said, searching for the right metaphor. "The branches bend but don't break. Weaver is saying that if you build flexibility into the resonance patterns, they'll self-correct automatically." Understanding dawned on Dr. Sharma's face. "Oh, so instead of forcing the cascade to follow a rigid path, we let it find its own equilibrium within defined parameters?" "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. He looked at Weaver. "Right?" Weaver made a gesture that Marcus had learned meant affirmation. "The younger species often try to control what they should guide," it said. "Quantum systems are alive in their own way. They want to find balance. Let them." The team went back to work with renewed energy, implementing the changes Weaver had suggested. Marcus watched them, feeling that same satisfaction he always felt when translation worked, when understanding bridged the gap between different ways of thinking. "You're good at this," Weaver observed as they left the lab. "Better than I would be alone. I understand the physics, but you understand the people." "We make a good team," Marcus said. It was what he had said to the bio-neural network in Jake's story, he realized. The principle was the same. Partnership instead of domination. Cooperation instead of control. That evening, Marcus returned to his quarters, which were nothing like the cell he had occupied as a prisoner. He had a window with a view of the stars. He had comfortable furniture. He had freedom to come and go as he pleased within the station. Most importantly, he had purpose. His tablet chimed with an incoming call. It was his sister Kate, back on Earth. They had reconnected after his pardon, rebuilding a relationship that prison had strained. "Hey, Marcus," she said when her face appeared on the screen. "I saw the news report about the quantum resonance project. They mentioned you by name." "Yeah, we're making good progress," Marcus said. "Weaver is teaching us things that should be impossible, and we're figuring out how to make them practical." "How is it? Working with something that used to be considered the most dangerous prisoner in the sector?" Marcus thought about that. "Honestly, it's like working with anyone else. Weaver has moods, preferences, sense of humor. Sometimes it gets frustrated when we don't understand something that seems obvious to it. Sometimes it's amazed by things we think are simple. It's just a person, Kate. A very strange, very powerful person, but still a person. You freed something that whole civilizations were afraid of," Kate said quietly. "Do you ever worry that you made a mistake?" "Every day," Marcus admitted. "But then I see what we're building here. I see species that barely trusted each other working together because Weaver is teaching all of us. I see technologies being developed that will save lives, improve lives. And I think maybe the mistake was imprisoning Weaver in the first place. Maybe the mistake was choosing fear over understanding." Kate smiled. You sound like you did before. Before the trial, before everything. You sound like someone who believes in making things better." After the call ended, Marcus stood at his window looking out at the stars. He thought about the journey that had brought him here. Corporate espionage conviction, 6 years in prison, abandonment, near death, and then a choice that changed everything. He had freed something dangerous. That was true. But he had also freed something valuable, something that was helping reshape the future. The question wasn't whether it had been risky. The question was whether the risk had been worth it. Looking at the bustling research station around him, at the ships coming and going, at the scientists from different species working together on projects that would have been impossible without Weaver's knowledge, Marcus thought the answer was yes. A year after the negotiations, Facility 7 hosted its first major conference. Representatives from 20 different species came to see the work being done and to discuss the implications of architect technology. The facility had been expanded twice to accommodate everyone. Marcus stood in the main hall watching delegates arrive. Some looked excited, others nervous, a few openly hostile. The debate about Weaver's freedom was still ongoing in many governments. There were factions that believed Weaver should be returned to containment, that the risk was too great. But there were also factions that saw the potential. In 1 year, technologies developed at Facility 7 had led to breakthroughs in medicine, power generation, space travel, and communication. Ships using Weaver-designed quantum drives could now cross distances that used to take months in mere days. Medical facilities using architect-inspired regeneration techniques were curing diseases that had been considered terminal. The opening ceremony was carefully choreographed. Marcus would speak first, providing context and history. Then Weaver would present some of their recent work. The goal was to show that cooperation was working, that the fears about Weaver had been unfounded. Marcus walked to the podium. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species looked back at him. He thought about what he wanted to say, about the story he needed to tell. 1 year ago, Marcus began, I was a prisoner waiting to die. This facility was failing around me. I had maybe 2 days of oxygen left. Everything seemed hopeless. He paused, letting that sink in. Then I made a choice. I could die alone, or I could take a risk. I could accept what I had been told about the prisoner in the deep section, or I could talk to it directly. I chose to talk. I chose to listen. I chose to see a person instead of a threat. Marcus gestured toward Weaver, who stood at the side of the stage. That choice saved my life. But more than that, it opened up possibilities that neither of us could have imagined. We learned that we could work together, that our different perspectives made us stronger, not weaker. That partnership was more powerful than control. He looked out at the audience. This past year has proven something important. We are better together. Humans, archaeons, all of our species, we each have our strengths and limitations. But when we combine our knowledge, when we choose cooperation over fear, we can accomplish things that none of us could do alone. There was polite applause, though Marcus could see skepticism on many faces. He understood. Words were easy. It was time for demonstration. Weaver took the stage. Its form had stabilized over the past year into something more consistent, though it still shifted slightly, still existed in more dimensions than most beings could fully perceive. But it was less unsettling now. Familiarity had dulled the strangeness. I am the last architect, Weaver said, its voice resonating through the hall. For 4,000 years, I was imprisoned because your ancestors feared what they did not understand. I do not blame them for that fear. Fear is a natural response to the unknown, but fear is also a choice. Weaver manipulated the air in front of it, and suddenly the space above the stage filled with light and color. A quantum field visualization appeared, showing complex patterns that shifted and flowed like living things. This is quantum reality, Weaver explained. This is what I see when I look at the universe. To you, it appears chaotic, dangerous, incomprehensible. But to me, It is beautiful. It is art. It is possibility. Weaver's fingers moved, and the quantum field responded, patterns forming and dissolving. I could use this power to destroy. That is what you fear. But watch what I can create instead. The quantum field coalesced into a structure, a geometric pattern of breathtaking complexity. It was a ship design, Marcus realized. A vessel that could exist partially in normal space and partially in quantum space, moving between them at will. This is a gift, Weaver said. A ship design that will allow instant travel between any 2 points in this galaxy. No more months-long journeys. No more isolation. The galaxy becomes small enough for all your species to truly know each other. The hall erupted. Scientists rushed forward, recording devices aimed at the hologram. Politicians huddled together, discussing implications. Even the skeptics looked stunned. Marcus watched it all and felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This was what he had freed. Not a threat, but a teacher. Not a destroyer, but a creator. After the presentation, Marcus found himself surrounded by delegates asking questions. How did he communicate with Weaver? How did he translate architect concepts into terms other species could understand? Was it safe? Could Weaver be trusted? He answered patiently, drawing on a year of experience. Yes, it was safe. Yes, Weaver could be trusted, as much as any being could be trusted. The key was communication, understanding, seeing beyond fear to the person underneath. One delegate, an Archeon overseer named Telth, asked the question Marcus had been waiting for. But what if you're wrong? What if this architect turns on us? What if all of this cooperation is a deception? Marcus met Telth's eyes. Then we'll deal with it. But I spent 3 weeks alone with Weaver when it could have killed me at any moment. I've worked beside it for a year, seen it frustrated and tired and happy and sad. I've watched it struggle to understand our cultures, seen it excited when someone grasps a concept it's trying to teach. And I've learned something important. Trust isn't about certainty. It's about choosing to see the best in someone while staying alert to reality. That sounds naive, Telth said. Maybe, Marcus admitted. But consider the alternative. We could have left Weaver in containment. Eventually, the facility would have failed completely, and Weaver would have escaped anyway. But it would have escaped angry, alone, with no reason to cooperate with anyone. Instead, we have a partner who is actively helping us. Which scenario seems wiser? Telth had no answer to that. As the conference continued over the next 3 days, Marcus watched attitudes shift. Delegates who came skeptical left convinced. Scientists who came curious left inspired. Politicians who came hostile left negotiating for access to architect technology. The turning point came on the final day, when Weaver made an announcement that shocked everyone. I am not the last architect, Weaver said. I believed I was, but I have been listening to the quantum field, searching through the patterns of reality. There are others, scattered, hidden, imprisoned in facilities like this one across the galaxy. I can feel them now that I am free, like distant voices in a vast darkness. The hall went silent. I want to find them, Weaver continued. I want to free them, but I will not do so without your consent and cooperation. I propose a joint effort. Your governments and I working together to locate these prisons, to carefully free the architects inside, to integrate them into your society, as I have been integrated. Together, we can ensure that this happens safely, with oversight and cooperation. It was a masterstroke of diplomacy, Marcus realized. Weaver wasn't demanding freedom for its people. It was asking for partnership in achieving it. The architect had learned from their year together. It had learned how to work within the systems of the younger species. The debate that followed was intense. Some delegates argued it was too dangerous. Others pointed out that Weaver could probably free the other architects alone if it chose to. At least this way, governments would have some control over the process. In the end, a compromise was reached. A joint task force would be created to investigate Weaver's claims. If other architects were found, their cases would be evaluated individually. Those who were willing to cooperate, to work within the framework that had been established at Facility 7, would be offered the same conditional freedom that Weaver enjoyed. Marcus was appointed as the human representative to this task force. It made sense. He understood both Weaver and human politics. He could bridge the gap between architect and younger species perspectives. As the conference ended and delegates departed, Marcus found himself alone with Weaver in the observation deck, their favorite place to talk. "You planned that announcement," Marcus said. "You knew it would force them to work with you." "I learned from the best," Weaver replied. "You taught me that the key to negotiation is offering something that benefits everyone. They want security and control. I want my people free. This proposal gives us both what we need." "There are probably dozens of architects out there," Marcus said. "Maybe hundreds. Are they all like you? Patient? Willing to cooperate?" "I do not know," Weaver admitted. "Some may be angry after thousands of years of imprisonment. Some may be unstable. Some may truly be dangerous. But leaving them in prisons that are slowly failing is not a solution. At least this way, we can approach the problem carefully." Marcus looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other beings like Weaver waited in darkness, imprisoned for crimes they may or may not have committed. The task of freeing them safely would take years, maybe decades. It would be dangerous and complex, but it was better than the alternative. Better than waiting for facilities to fail and architects to escape into a universe that feared them. Better than perpetuating cycles of fear and imprisonment. "It's going to be a lot of work," Marcus said. "Yes," Weaver agreed. "But we have time, and we have each other. That is more than I had 4,000 years ago, more than either of us had 1 year ago." Marcus smiled. A year ago, he had been prisoner 73847, abandoned and forgotten, waiting to die in the darkness of a failing station. Now he was Marcus Chen, diplomat and translator, partner to the last free architect, working to reshape the future of multiple species. He had freed something dangerous, something that civilizations had worked together to imprison. He had made a choice that could have ended in disaster. Instead, it had ended in hope. "You know," Marcus said, "when I pressed that button to release your containment, I thought I was just trying to survive. I didn't know I was starting a revolution. The best changes often begin with simple survival," Weaver said. "You chose to live. Everything else followed from that choice." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching ships move through the darkness of space. Out there, other architects waited. Other prisons slowly failed. Other choices would need to be made. But for now, in this moment, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Purpose. The knowledge that he had made a difference. He had been a convict left to die in an alien prison. Instead, he had freed something far worse than anyone imagined. He had freed hope, and that, Marcus thought, was worth any risk.